Welcome to the NASA High Power Rocketry video series. In this video, we'll be discussing safety. High power rocketry is a challenging, fun, and rewarding hobby. Watching a 20-pound rocket roar to the skies in front of a billowing plume of smoke and fire and then float back to Earth gently under a parachute is breathtaking, but the thrill can diminish quickly if someone gets hurt or property is damaged. Therefore, learning about and practicing good safety habits are the most important parts of rocketry. As a reminder, these videos are only intended to briefly introduce high-power rocketry and to supplement the guidance of an experienced mentor. These videos are not meant to be instructional nor replace the instruction of a mentor. The information presented here does not supersede any requirements or laws imposed by the authorities that have jurisdiction in the area where you will fly your rocket. It's up to you to ensure that you meet all local, state, and federal regulations concerning high-power rocketry before you participate in any launch activities. It is also up to you to follow the best practices when handling the materials associated with the build and flight of a high-power rocket. The best place to gain that knowledge is with the hands-on guidance of a mentor. The key point to remember is that the safety and personnel, hardware, and property depends on you, the rocket flyer. It's vital to take a proactive and preventive approach to safety. This requires full engagement at all times. A split second of complacency or inattention can lead to a life-changing accident. For this reason, it is especially important to closely supervise children and students as they work on a rocketry project. One of the first points of safety is the adherence to the safety codes for rocketry's governing bodies, the National Association of Rocketry, NAR, and the Tripoli Rocketry Association. These codes cover high-level design traits and the proper launch process. The rocket manufacturing process is as hazardous as the flight itself, and because it often happens in an uncontrolled environment, it's important to understand the hazards and their mitigation. You are working with power tools, hand tools, chemicals, and processes that are dangerous and may be new to you. As you are building your rocket, there are numerous ways to mitigate the risk. Seek guidance from an experienced mentor. People that have been involved in the hobby for many years hold knowledge and experience that can help prevent accidents. Using this guidance from the beginning will make you safer throughout the build process. Research the manufacturer's instructions, warnings, and procedures. Often manufacturers will list specific instructions for working with their materials. These instructions and warnings are written with the safety of the user in mind, so adhere to these instructions to minimize accidents. Write and use checklists. These checklists should be based on the experience of your mentor along with instructions from the manufacturer. In the excitement of a hobby, it's easy to overlook a single, important step, and this can lead to a life-changing accident. Strictly adhering to a well-written checklist will help prevent this. Keep and study a material safety data sheet for each material and chemical that you will use. A material safety data sheet, often called an MSDS, is a document containing information for the safe use and handling of a certain product. It contains information including chemical and common name, physical and chemical characteristics, physical and health hazards, procedures for safe handling and use, appropriate personal protective equipment, emergency and first aid procedures, manufacturer information. If the MSDS is followed, the likelihood of an accident is greatly reduced. Never work alone. Working with a team helps ensure that no steps are forgotten because multiple people can check procedures and look for mistakes. Also, if an accident happens, there will be someone to administer first aid and call for help. If you are working alone, there are no separate sets of eyes to check your work or take care of you if you become incapacitated after an accident. During flight preparation, it's important to foster a culture of maturity and respect for the risk involved. Horseplay is never tolerated at a launch. Because rocketry is an outdoor activity, it's important to pay attention to the weather elements. For hot weather launches, stay hydrated. Use sunscreen and sunglasses, and stay in the shade when possible. When walking out to recover your rocket, take a bottle of water and a cell phone with you in case of an emergency. If your rocket drifts off the launch field, make sure that your clothes and shoes will protect you from insects and rugged ground cover. For cold weather launches, be sure to dress warmly or in layers and wear appropriate hats and gloves. When preparing the rocket, it's important to wear protective equipment and clothing. This material is called personal protective equipment, or PPE for short. The appropriate PPE to wear can be found in the manufacturer's material safety data sheet, but common examples are goggles, gloves, flame retardant clothing, static discharging wrist stats, and respirators or masks when working with powders or lung irritants. Also, when preparing the rocket, it is important to avoid open flame and static discharge sources, since rocketry uses black powder and other flame-sensitive materials. Smoking, cooking, or any other activity that involves an open flame should take place well away from the rocket prep area. As discussed in the avionics video, transmitters of any type can emit energy that can excite electric matches, motor igniters, and altimeters. It is important to ensure that all transmitters and altimeters are turned off or tested well away from the preparation area. Even cell phones can emit enough energy to excite an ejection charge, so use a cell phone away from the preparation area as well. Often, rocketeers like to test the continuity of their ejection charge circuit. After preparation is complete, this should be done with the rocket pointed away from people and with a minimum number of people involved. Be sure that the range safety officer is aware of your intentions and has given permission to test circuits. One of the biggest safety concerns with flight preparation is the inadvertent ejection charge ignition on the ground while people are nearby. This is mitigated by mental involvement, following common safety procedures, and using common sense. During flight operations, you will check in with the range safety officer with your rocket prepped and ready to fly. To minimize any accidental ejections or ignitions, all electrical circuits should be off and motor igniters should not be inserted. The range safety officer will inspect the rocket and give the final okay for rocket launch. You will then proceed to the launch control officer, who will assign your rocket a launch pad based on the size of the rocket and the motor. The payload often determines what pad the rocket will be on. Quite often, rockets with more complicated flight profiles will be placed on a pad further away from the crowd. When you approach your pad, be sure that your electronics are off and the igniter is not in the motor. Also, be sure that the firing circuit controlled by the launch control officer is open. These circuits vary from club to club, so ask the launch host or local club about how to ensure the circuit is open. Once you verify this, place your rocket on the pad. With the rocket in the launch position, the next step is to arm the recovery system circuits and any payload circuits. When all circuits are armed, you can insert your igniter into the motor. It's important to arm the recovery circuits first, so if there is an inadvertent ignition, the recovery circuit is armed and the likelihood of a ballistic recovery is lowered. After the igniter is inserted, hook up the ignition leads from the firing circuit and return to the flight line. Ultimately, your number one goal in high-power rocketry is to keep yourself, your colleagues, and surrounding property safe. If everybody stays healthy, everybody can have fun. Seek guidance, ask questions, use caution, pay attention to yourself and others, and high-power rocketry can be a safe and rewarding hobby for a lifetime.